We are joined today by our session facilitator, Dr. Shayanna, um, Dr. Shayanna Whitaker. I invite you to review her bio, which you can access via the DEI Summit virtual event platform. But just to give you a little background about her, she is a dynamic leader with over 28 years of corporate work experience. She does a lot of workshops that foster inclusion, transform conversations for transparency, and empower individuals to own their own mindset. So we are so excited to have her here with us today. At this time, I would like to turn the microphone over to our session presenter, Dr. Whitaker, to get us started. So thank you.
Thank you for the wonderful introduction, Jalitha. I appreciate it. And thank you everyone for joining. Just want to give myself a moment here to share screen so that I can share the slides with you. So today we're going to cover some inclusiveness and let me see, am I able to share? Are you able to see my screen? I'm assuming that's a yes. Okay. Okay, so in our session today, we're going to talk about inclusiveness and how, since we're amplifying the I and the individual, we want to talk about how there are no two individuals alike, and that we want to make sure that we honor everyone's individual needs as well as shared needs. So we'll talk about that in our presentation here today. And so we'll start off with what we can recognize here is the organization that we all work in. So organizations can be equivalent to the departments in the larger companies or just within the groups here. And when you're looking at the highlighted area here, where it says the individuals, you're going to see that the individuals are a main part of the organization, and they are the part that adapts to the change. And we have to be able to adapt to this in a dynamic way, because that's how you stay ahead in the industry and ahead with the industry. So excuse me for stuttering there. So the three elements that are a part of the organization would be the technology, the processes, and the individuals. And with the processes, they can't work without the individuals following those processes, and the technology can't be separated either because the technology can't run itself. So needless to say, there is huge impact on the value that an individual brings. So we want to make sure that we nurture and take care of the individual and the shared needs of those that the individuals work with, and look at a person as a human and all the behaviors that are associated with it, and not just another person that can just be replaced. Okay, so what I wanted to do here is start off with a video to kind of help break some of this up, and I'm going to.
Conflict is a process in which one party perceives that its interests are being opposed or negatively affected by another party. Conflict is based upon perceptions. That is, one party perceives that the other party is opposing their interests. There are various views of conflict. The traditional view is the belief that all conflict is harmful and must be avoided. That is, conflict is dysfunctional. In the traditional view, conflict leads to negative outcomes such as wasting time, energy, and resources, less information sharing and productivity, more organizational politics, more job dissatisfaction, turnover, and stress, and the weakening of team cohesion when conflict is within the team. The human relations view is the belief that conflict is a natural and inevitable outcome in any group, and thus, conflict cannot be eliminated from organizations. The interactionist view is the belief that conflict is not only a positive force in a group, but that it is absolutely necessary for a group to perform effectively. That is, conflict is functional. In the interactionist view, conflict leads to positive outcomes such as fuller debate of decision choices, decision assumptions are questioned, potentially generates more creative ideas, improves responsiveness to external environments, and increases team cohesion when conflict is with other teams. Coming from the Interactionist View is the optimal conflict perspective, which remains popular today. In the optimal conflict view, conflict is dysfunctional when the level of conflict is too low or too high. At low levels of conflict, the work unit becomes apathetic and stagnant. The unit lacks new ideas and is non-responsive to change. At high levels of conflict, the work unit is disruptive, chaotic, and uncooperative. Hence, at both low and high levels of conflict, unit performance is low. The optimal view states that a moderate or optimal level of conflict leads the work unit to be viable, self-critical, and innovative. Therefore, at this optimal level of conflict, the work unit's performance is high. The emerging school of thought on conflict is that there are two types of conflict. The first type of conflict is task or constructive conflict. Task conflict occurs when parties focus on the issue and respect people with other points of view. Here, individuals try to understand logic and assumptions of each position. The second type of conflict is relationship conflict. Relationship conflict focuses on personal characteristics, not the issues, as the source of conflict. For relationship conflict, individuals try to undermine each other's worth and competence. Here, conflict is accompanied by strong negative emotions. So, what type of conflict is preferred? As you may have guessed, the goal is to encourage task conflict and minimize relationship conflict. What then is the issue, even if only task conflict exists? The issue here is that relationship conflict often develops when engaging in task conflict. Three strategies or conditions may help to minimize relationship conflict during task conflict episodes, including emotional intelligence, cohesive teams, and supportive team norms, all three which we covered earlier in the semester.
So what I was trying to get you to see is though that the individuals, even though they are able to work together, have individual needs, when they're not seeing eye to eye or even able to understand each other, when they're trying to express themselves, they'll have conflict in the organization. So when they're going through change of leadership, new employees joining the team, or if there's a merger or reaction to an acquisition or a change in the environment or the needs of what the business products are, the way people see the solution, the way their expectations are being set can be different. And how do we embrace the change or the conflict and say, hey, this is how we can work together better, is where I come in and help the teams become high performing and help them understand each other as an individual and set boundaries and support each other's needs and mature as an individual, as an employee, as a staff member, in addition to maturing in the industry, the organization itself maturing in the industry so that they can become industry leaders. Because you can't become an industry leader when your individuals, when your employees are not connected and supporting each other, because that's where the adversity kind of creates the opportunity for new ideas to come from that. So that's why another example on why the individuals being inclusive of each individual is important. And so unresolved conflict negatively impacts the team rapport, and the team rapport is the most important part. So let's see, and so I've already covered that piece. I'll go to the next slide. So as I'm talking about individuals being dynamic, we have lots of tools that we can leverage, right? So there's personality traits, and here are the big five that one of the tests uses. So you can have tests for the Myers-Briggs, you could have DISC tests. There's lots of different personality tests that kind of help you understand what a person is going to be like in their characteristics. So you'll know that when you're working with them, how to either be more inclusive or how to avoid the conflict of if I approach them in a certain way, are they going to be agreeable or not? If I approach them in a certain way, are they going to be open and receptive to me? What kind of personality traits do they have, and are their traits triggered by the way I approach them? So I open up the floor on those conversations so that not only do people understand how they're being perceived, but their intention on what they want to communicate is being received as well. And they just take time to unpack and speak of it in a broader sense so that they understand each other, more important than just rushing to the end goal of the conversation just being over because the meeting time is over. A lot of the timelines do put pressure on people. And when they're operating, and I have the platitude versus attitude here, when they're operating in the sense of platitude, what that means is they know what they know that they know it. And they're like, okay, I know it. And there's no reason for me to be open-minded about any new information because I know everything right now. And sometimes that comes off as, it can come off as confident, or it can come off as arrogant, and it can come off as closing other people down, triggering them to shut down. And that's not really the goal when you're trying to be inclusive and get buy-in from others and share the workload. Otherwise, you just have one individual doing the work instead of many within the team. And you're not going to be sustainable that way because emergencies happen. And if that person's out, who else has had buy-in in the solutions? So team rapport is important because you want to make sure that as you're building the trust and the foundation of the team and growing, that you're able to allow people to develop and grow along their professional careers without having to constantly just come to work and just follow a checkbox and then just leave, because that doesn't help you grow, nor does it help the company grow either. So some healthy relationships that's always been recommended is to always find a leader or a mentor or and work with your team members. And I say that those things should continue, but whose responsibility is it, right? It's like the new person when they're trying to come into an organization, who's responsible? What buddies do they have? So when you think about your organization, what buddies do they have to help them go through the onboarding process? Or if you're changing teams, but they've been in the same company for a while, what processes do you have in place to make sure that they're being groomed and included into the new roles? And if people are feeling stagnant in their positions, how can they leverage other mentors to either contribute or become a mentor or be mentored? Like, what are those avenues, right? So I help individuals to identify what those are so that they are able to speak up on what they think that the company may need to provide, so that they'll be able to get what they need to be stronger professionally developed. Some things here that are constants that for ruining team rapport, I have a few bullets listed out here. And so it's no surprise that if someone has a personal agenda, or if it's their way or no way, that they that is what they want to pursue, then people may not buy into it, who may not agree, and then you don't have the full team effect in supporting, right? Or if someone always needs to be right, when the way that their tone is being expressed could be modified so that there could be another way that becomes obvious on the right next steps, as opposed to we always just do what one person says because they have high platitude, which is over here. Let's see. And trying to find my place on my notes here. So processes don't work without policy. And if your policies do not actually address these issues right here, then your team rapport is going to be at risk, and your turnover rate is going to be consistently high. So let's see if I can get ready for the second video.
In this short video, the supervisor Sue has called Rob into a conference room.
At a big company meeting where Sue announced a major decision, Rob spoke up and told everyone that he thought Sue's decision was the wrong one. As Rob's boss, Sue arranged this meeting to discuss a situation with Rob. This video shows two possible approaches Sue can take to resolving a conflict. Which would you choose?
Hi Sue, how are you?
I am fine, Rob. I hope you are as well.
You asked to see me. What is this about?
Well, I was very disappointed in your response to the announcement yesterday. I think it was unprofessional and put me in a very bad position as your supervisor.
I am sorry to hear that, but if you knew what you were doing, I would not have responded that way.
Rob, I have had enough of your childish behavior and lack of respect. You can pack up your belongings now. I will have security escort you from the building. Goodbye. Well, Rob, I am sorry that you feel that way. Had I known you felt that way, I would have made sure we sat down to discuss this prior to the meeting. Now, why don't we sit down and discuss why you think I do not know what I'm doing?
Rob and Sue sit down, on the same side of the table, facing each other, both leaning slightly forward in an active listening pose. This conflict has a chance at being resolved.
So I wanted to take time to show what it could look like before and after. Because I often hear people say, well, our organization doesn't have any conflict, which I find humorous because if you get any two people together in a room, there's going to be conflict. There's going to be a different perspective, but are they taking time to actually say, well, when you said this, or using their I statements, this made me feel this way. Is that your intention? Have you accounted for these things? When you use different transition statements, does it include, are you trying to check back for validation that someone else understood you and that all your risks are being identified? Or if you are just trying to have yourself being heard. So that short clip there was just showing how you can go from having a poor team rapport all the way to if you just take time to put some active steps in how you're going to operate with each other, it will improve your relationships on the team, and then have you won't have to worry about making those same assumptions to be fact when you're working this way. So we want to make sure that we avoid these constants here. Okay, so when we're thinking about who needs support, which individuals need support, I say that organizations, I think everyone needs the support. So it's not just the new people, it's not just the managers, it's not just the people who are being promoted in their roles that may or may not have a manager or empowering title. I think everyone needs support. Everyone needs to feel like it's okay that that my voice is not only heard, but that it's being included, right? So organizations are facing increasingly competitive and dynamic environments requiring employees' initiatives and their innovation and their efficiency and their high performance. They need to meet all these different metrics in order to be competitive. And though the metrics make sense, but if you're not taking care of the individual while they're trying to support you, then when you're trying to ask them, hey, where's the work-life balance? They need some balance throughout the day while they're working, not just when I get off work, I need to be able to pick up the kids, or, where is the work-life balance and the support of the individuals while you're in the office? So when we say we need support, everyone who needs support, everyone does, because everything is relationship building, and it's always a journey. You never just arrived and say, I've supported you enough. It is an evolving expectation that you will always need to support each other in a manner of service, and not I'm trying to avoid the word slave, but not to just be commanded that in a threat term that if you don't do something, then you're going to be reprimanded for it. So we want to make sure that we serve and support in that way. So you want to establish ground rules and set habits so that as you're talking to each other, you'll know how to, when is a good time to talk. Do you have too many things on your plate? How do you either improve the skill or leverage someone else, or help coach someone along so that they'll be able to help you going forward? So those voices that never get a chance to, and some people won't speak up because they're worried about it. Do I get to keep my job? We're in the middle of a pandemic, and we're worried about, can I move around, or what the options were. They shouldn't have to worry about that. If they're just getting the support that they need, then they'll be able to be better for the company, and as well as for the clients. So there's some advantages in bias, and we're going to talk about that here. So I wanted to point out that in some recent research, there was 734 organizations that were being measured for their soft skills. And it found they were able to find that the soft skills and the values of the company that aligned to the values in the employee and the stakeholder interests, when all of those things were considered, then the company normally performed better. So there is bias in meaning that you should want to create a mutual trust or relationships with each other, but you have to understand that it does unconsciously occur with the affinity bias, meaning that if people may not look like you, may not come from the same school or same neighborhoods or the same even side of the continent as you, then you're less likely able to connect as quickly with others. And if everyone is going to be more inclusive and hire more diversity, when they get in the door, what do you do with the people? How do you work together, right? I've worked on lots of projects with teams where they're like, it's a language barrier. Okay, well, what is it? What part of this do you want to unpack, and not just say, okay, I see the differences because we're more alike than we're different. Let's find those pieces. So I help you with looking past the affinity bias, but continuing to build out the mutual respect for each other. So I'm trying to decide if I can add if we can ask people to put in the chat here. I'll work with Jalitha to get any feedback. But the questions I wanted to ask to the audience is how would individuals in your organization feel if the work environment was highly synergetic? Even though no one looked alike or didn't come from the same colleges or the same certifications background, but they're able to leverage the strengths from the different avenues that they learned from, what would it feel like if you were more synergetic with each other? If you could, and what would that look like if you were synergetic, and would the product results be better for the customer? And then would they, I expect you would say that the customer would appreciate their products more, because we'd be able to take the voice of the customer back and alternate it a little bit more, work through it a little bit more to get a better product. So that's what I expect to kind of hear, but I don't know if I'm able to get any feedback on that question in the middle of the presentation.
Yes, if you
Okay,
if you want to, and I don't see any in the chat room right now,
okay.
Dr. Whitaker, but I will keep an eye on it. Please, if you have any feedback for that question, please put it in the chat or in the Q&A section that you've been provided.
Thank you for that. So I'll repeat the question again. How would individuals in your organization feel if the work environment was highly synergetic? Do you think it's something that they would appreciate? And we can come back to that to give you time to respond. And as we go forward here for the value to the organization, I'm gonna move my picture here so you can see. It says passion led us here is what the picture says. And when I picked this picture, and I was thinking about the time where I knew the problem I wanted to solve, and I went to school and got all the certifications and programs to help me solve the problem. And I came with all this excitement and knowledge and platitude, and like, I know that when I go into the organization, I can bring this. But every organization I got to, I kept running into a wall of, yeah, we don't do it that way. And it was never an open opportunity to say, well, are y'all open to, can you tell me why we don't do it that way? Are we open to modifying it any? Because, I'm coming out with the recent research. I'm thinking we should be able to apply it. And I didn't always find it. So I learned that there was another gap where how do you give everyone a voice in the conversation and help them decide, okay, once we're done brainstorming, these are the steps we're going to execute on and go forward with. It wasn't always, the synergy wasn't always there. And the value that it could bring to the organization would be the stronger relationships, the significance increase in employee pride, less attrition, and the ones I have listed here, improved employee referral, increased value for the proprietary data, meaning you don't have to worry about your data walking out the door to your competitor. Nor do you have to worry about people leaving and taking someone with them, which was a common trend in the IT groups that I worked with. And then you want to have an increased behavior of initiative, where someone say, hey, I have an idea, is this the time to bring this up? So that's the value it could bring to the organization when your rapport is strong. And then exactly the opposite if it's not, right? So let's see. I was asking if so in my notes here, I was like, can you imagine individuals that are empowered and create communication channels that may not exist in organizations to address the challenges? And in order for us to create stronger relationships with another client, we were able to do a poll with the employees and say, hey, what gaps do you think you need? Because I've learned that they appreciate their feedback being brought into fruition in the organization more than just contracting someone out and say, hey, this is what they think that we should do and let's do it. So if you actually could employ some of the people within the company in different organizations that have different representations of people and say of the company and say, hey, as well as your clients, and say, hey, how can we where are the gaps, what avenues do we need to make us be able to relate to each other better, so that when we're following our processes and using the technologies that we have, whether we have the most recent versions of something or older versions, how can we be our best selves? That is the when you develop and strengthen those relationships, it makes it less awkward to schedule meetings or share ideas or challenge someone, which is how you get to your stronger relationships. So empowered, so research has also shown that empowered individuals tend to experience moral distress less frequently. So no one wants to be stressed at work or not look forward to the Mondays or the Wednesdays or any of the other days because they're stressed. So when you empower them more, and you empower them by saying, hey, this is how you can create these channels and this is how you can support each other, those doing things like that, it reduces the level of burnout, it increases the overall job performance. And so when you do that, it's consistent. It's not something that gives you a short-term benefit. It's a value to the organization in the sense of a long-term repeatable benefit. Let's see. To the next slide. So LEAD here stands for leverage everyone and drive. And if you're leveraging everyone, then you're more likely to, if everyone's going at a really fast pace, which is what always happens in corporate America, they're like, we got to get to something quick and we got to hurry up and fail fast and move. But if everyone is just looking in one direction, then you're most likely going to miss something. But if you have many people in your team considering different angles that a risk or something may occur, then when you're leveraging everyone and getting the voice and say, hey, have you remembered this, or have you thought about this, or is this the right way, and just kind of checking your gut on ethics and everything, and if is this the right thing to do, then you're more likely to be resilient to the market whenever there's a change or a need in the market. And when you are looking at well, they look at more things as an opportunity as opposed to a challenge of, oh, we can't do this, or we're making changes again. That tone that's negative goes away, not immediately. It degrades, disintegrates over time, because their attitude and the momentum that comes with the attitude on how to be a better contributor and be more accountable all comes in when you're leveraging everyone, because they know that, okay, I know I'm an expert at this piece. Let me help you and let me tell you what I was thinking and be open to ideas. So I help to massage the conversations in teams so that it organically develops, and you don't have to depend on someone babysitting or monitoring all the meetings to make sure everyone behaves. It becomes a culture. It improves the culture. So when I think about theory, in order to be a doctor, you balance theory, you try to understand practice, and you look at all the research and you say, where are the gaps? And when I look through the different behavioral theories, the theory of reason action stuck out the most, and it predicted the willingness. It talks about the ability to predict others' willingness to share information. The positive is on that is when you're sharing information, you're able to be open to receiving other information or making sure everyone is equally informed. When we go to the opposite or the negative effect of sharing information from a security perspective, it can bring up points of your circumventing process to make sure someone else gets our proprietary information. So I help teams to make sure, my background includes the behavioral piece, the security pieces, the technology, and such. So as I'm looking through the different departments, I'm able to see the positive and the negatives for the willingness to share piece, not just that, but in different parts of the behavior of a person. And that, so whether they're going to hoard information is also a thing, to where if they're not able to build on the team rapport, hoarding could cause them not to share, and a leader may not be able to make a full decision because all the information wasn't shared. So when we're leveraging everyone, we want to make sure that we're leveraging all the right ethical pieces, and so that we can continue the trust, because the one time someone's not accountable and the one time someone's not following through what they were supposed to do, that diminishes, again, the rapport of the team. And so we want to make sure that the managers are able to predict the behavior, provide realistic and strategic support for them. And remember that mindset can be influenced, and your relationships are being influenced, and behavior can change. But if you have the wrong, the voice, the negative voice is louder than anyone else, then the mindset's going to be tainted for a while. And you want, instead of getting rid of a person, you can say, hey, there's another way to look at it. Why don't we start finding ways to keep our existing talent, our existing employees, our existing individuals, and just operate in a different way so that you can continue to contribute to the business practices. So let's see. The implications for the social change. So here you'll see a picture of two people. It's common to see people in IT, or even now we're working from home on our laptops, or in an environment where we're in a group, a meeting room, working on our laptops, and we're working together. But there are times that we tap someone on the shoulder and say, hey, I need help with this. Stop what you're doing and focus on this, because I need some direction here. I come into a blocking point. And that happens a lot, but you want to make sure that there's a balance, and making sure that you identify the right skill set, so that it's not, you're not tagging on others so much to where you're able to be successful in your role. And what I want to call out is, even though we're working as a team, where they say together everyone works, everyone accomplishes more. But when the individual is not supported with the right tools, or may not be in the right role, then sometimes the I stands out a little bit louder. They're like, it's all about me. And then the team can get frustrated. So I help you to find the balance in being able to use transition statements that will help you to say, you know, this will, I feel like I need help here, or when you said this, I need more information here. Those kind of things that help the team to kind of evolve and know how to set expectations with each other, to reduce the conflict that can occur, so that they are more focused on the task or fixing what the issue is, and not being frustrated with each other because they think, you know, they're making assumptions backed on their assessment of how the other person is interpreting their task. So you have to make a pattern of inclusion, and make sure you create a pattern in behaviors that help to fill the void of assumptions, so that everyone has a chance to contribute and be accountable for the change that needs to happen in the teams. And then I want to call out, like, the I here, once the individual is has been called out, you can't really ignore it anymore. You're always going to see that that it's there. And my personal acronym for team is, it addresses the tone that you're using with each other, the energy that you have when you come to the meetings, or when you're sending emails and such, how you show up, the attitude that you have while you're having the sessions together, and even the pouting or the excitement that you may have when you're done. And then the mindset, are you reframing things in a way so that when you're trying to get through a challenge, how do I reframe it? Or is there another way to say it so that I can find a solution? And what happens when you have too much of a single thought, or it's groupthink, right? You have one person that speaks up a lot, and it can be negative in a way where we're only operating one way, and it doesn't include the inclusiveness. It doesn't include the ideas that others could have that could evolve the outcome. And we're just doing the same thing because one person said. And then sometimes bureaucracy looks that way as well. They're like, well, if the manager says that we're going that way, we're not giving him or her enough information to make that decision. So we want to make sure that there's some balance in the uniformity. We're uniform in the way we follow processes, and the way we respect and provide an equitable tone when we're talking to each other and when we're being reliable, but not in the sense of all the answers have to be the same. So we want to make sure when we're talking about uniformity and generalizing, it's in the same camp, but you want to make sure that if there's differences and there's risks associated, you want to call that out so that everyone can represent themselves the best way in their role as they're sharing decisions or sharing ideas to get to the end point. Let's see. All right, so behaviors can change. And then I've consulted a few companies where there's lots of team members who don't speak up. They may not say something first because they're processing the information and they don't speak up really loud. But it's been interpreted as, they don't care or they aren't thinking or they don't understand something. And so I help the teams to understand the individuals in the sense of it's where they give a voice of, it's not that I don't care, I just am thinking things through a little bit differently, or I need more information and I may not know how to ask the question without being attacked or being feeling like someone's being demeaning to me or anything like that. So I know that behaviors can change. You don't have to change the whole department. You can just change the individuals that interact with each other to get the same effect without having to do huge layoffs or other performance development plans that you want to make sure you include performance development plans where behavior and task align to their abilities and not leave the behavior pieces out. So what I wanted to talk about here was, even though there's different approaches to consider impacting how a behavior can change, I wanted to focus on the ground rules piece because the ground rules to me is the foundation. And that is something that you normally workshop that and have specific meetings to talk about, hey, what are our values as an individual? How do I make sure that my voice is being heard? How do I make sure there's certain behaviors that are not triggering fear or insecurity or demeaning tones and things like that? How do I make sure that those things don't happen? And then you have to make sure your ground rules are revisited on a frequent basis. And then the team can decide if that needs to be monthly or quarterly, depending on how frequently you meet and if the needs of the team are different with how they interact with each other. So you want to envision the ground rule as a foundation because the foundation has to be stable so that you can build on it and make sure that the processes of the organization are aligned to it so that we're not circumventing processes or going against what the organization expects, but you're also honoring the shared needs of each other. All right. And the power in the reframe, I wanted to talk about the ability to reframe or restate or look at something in a different way. And one of the thoughts that come to mind is when I saw the picture of the baby here, I was like, it's human nature for us to naturally talk to a child or a toddler or someone else where we're like, you know what, they don't have experience in this or they don't know. Let me just say it a different way so I'm sure they understand. And we take an extra step where we're as individuals are reaching out to others and saying, we know that there may be another way to look at it, but that same behavior doesn't always show up in the office. What shows up in the office is, I've already repeated it. Why can't you go find it here? And it's a different energy. It's a different message that you're sending. It's not saying I'm supporting you. It's submitting, go figure it out. And so that can be modified some. And when you're reframing and how you're talking to each other, you also have to reframe how you talk to yourself because, for example, we'll use the words nervous and excitement, right, for the purposes of this. And your brain doesn't understand the difference between nervous or excitement. It's the same feeling in your body. But if you're, and it provokes the same feeling when you're talking to someone else. So if you're saying that I'm nervous and I don't know how this is going to go, you're negatively charging another person and then their anxiety raises. Well, you want to reduce that anxiety a bit so that everyone can have the good energy and synergy to work with each other. And what instead of using words like negative, I'm nervous, you want to say I'm excited. And when you use excitement, it allows you to open up your thoughts in the way that you frame your expectations for what could come out of the conflict or the challenge that you're going through. It allows you to open up and have a depth of understanding of solving the problem, understanding the person or the situation a little bit better, and saying, because you're giving details about what could happen, I'm excited about this, and this is what the color and the activity would look like, as opposed to just saying I'm nervous, and because nervous could follow with all the things that could happen wrong. But when your excitement, your mind is already programmed to, oh, these are all the things that could happen that could go right. And you want the positive or the latter part to be used in your teams as you're developing. So I want you to ask yourself, what humanity strategies, if there are any, are going to be used in your organization to reduce the political, the personal agendas, increase relationship building, aligning the corporate and the team and the individual values, and empowering the work-life balance. So ask yourself those things, and then see if you can share those in the chat, that would be great. But I just want to make sure that you ask yourself that as you're hearing the presentation. And here, the picture here says a lot. So if you think back older times when we did the trust fall activity, we would blindfold and then fall back and hope someone catch you. But if we were to today say, okay, if I'm going to give you, one of your teammates is going to drive this motorcycle here around the curve, how much trust do you have in them? How do you how would you evaluate them, and how would you partner with them to make sure that both of y'all have exactly what you need to make it around the curve? Because you don't know if the curve here in this picture is going off a cliff. You don't know if there's a car coming fast around the way. How are you going to be able to respond and react and adjust as a group without just leaving the other one hanging off? And that's the kind of synergy I want you to kind of have, so that you can make sure, hey, provide warning or provide support, or at least make people feel like they're not alone when they're going through the different challenges or the changes that may happen in an organization, and the processes and things that may change along with it. You want to make sure that that as you're hiring people that are different from you, or integrating people into your teams that are different from you, that they're able to have that same sense of synergy. And I want you to think about, as the synergy doesn't mean that you don't have any conflict. It just means that you manage it in a healthier way, to where everyone's able to voice in a respectful way. And when emotions are high, you agree that it's okay to stop the conversation. We'll pick it up later, because we need to think through the actions that we're taking and make sure that we're not, and then try to understand, why am I taking this personal? So you want to make sure that, and those are not conversations or mental ideas that only happen at a lower level. Those same things happen in entry level management, executive. Like, everyone has these moments where they have to work with each other, and they're like, and some surprise comes up, and they have to set expectations for others. But no one wants to do it alone, where they feel like, oh, you have the backstabbing kind of environment. Those are not fruitful for the team nor for the organization. So you want to have some humility and some humanity in your team rapport. And so this is my final slide. This is just a few of the team building activities I've done with a few other clients, and just want to share the contact information here. So thank you for my presentation here. And I'm going to stop sharing to see if there was any questions, comments, concerns in the chat.
Thank you so much, Dr. Whitaker. There are some questions and comments in the chat. The first question that I do see, what do you mean? Could you give a little bit more clarity on what you mean by synergy or synergetic?
Yes. So when I'm thinking something's synergetic, you're thinking about how things are there. It's like when you're on I should have put the picture up here with the boat, where the people are on, like, imagine yourself on like a canoe in the ocean, which doesn't always go together, right? But when you're in the boat, you're able to go across the water and bounce and adjust your, but like what water rafting would probably be the better example, where you're able to just adjust your body, or the team can shift in a way to where the boat takes on less water as a unit and not everyone just all over the place. So we're finding a way to say, okay, let's all guide and go, one way with the oars, or just shifting our body weight just a minute to avoid some of the rocks or whatever. Let's just find a way to do it together, as opposed to let's just do our own thing and hope that, we don't all pop out of the boat. So whitewater rafting is probably the best visual example I can give you, using words. And if there's a way that we can all say, hey, tapping someone on the shoulder, you might want to consider this, or by the way, I learned this, it may impact you. Let me just take the time let's both lean in together, and I'll be happy to share what I learned and share the source that I got it from to see if it's reliable or not, if it's something we need to be concerned with, if it's something that you were aware of. I'm thinking, how would this role play out into a team environment? And then if we were to do something like that, what does that look like? What does that support structure look like when you're going into a meeting with new information? Or do you wait until it blows up in the end and say, oh, I probably should have told you that. So that's what I'm thinking or the visual sense for synergy.
Okay, thank you. So, and just to piggyback off that question, what would be some advice you would give? You talked about trying to prevent that blow up. So what if that blow up happens? What type of advice would you give team members if that blow up was to happen?
Sometimes it has to happen, right? It has to happen because if you don't have I'm not going to call it lack of maturity for the moment. If you don't have a practice way to speak up, sometimes people just let it all out, like they wear their feelings on their sleeves, and they're like, okay, I'm just going to say this. And because it's an unexpected reaction, other people in the room who may equally be at that maturity level, and everyone just starts blaring. It can happen, but I've personally always been the person to say, hey, it sounds like there's a lot going on here. So that I'm able to follow you. Do you mind if we just stop for a moment? Let me tell you, one, what I've heard you say. And then two, when you say this, it makes me think of this. Would this be a correct statement? And if there's lots of interruption, again, say, hey, it sounds like we all feel strongly about this. What I'll do is I'll set a follow-up meeting, and I'm going to have these people in place. Let's go get some more information for those who may not have it. And then let's agree on the amount of time we need to break up the conversation. And then let's set up an agenda on the order that we think that things should be discussed, like what's dependent on another. And then let's break it down from there and then see if we can get agreement. It's okay that it explodes. It just shouldn't explode so often to where people shut down, or they leave out information and you find out later, be like, oh, you need to know that. So then the sarcasm comes up, right? Because they're frustrated and they're angry, and it shows up as sarcasm. So I always say, and in those situations, you want to have more of the ground rules set up that, hey, we have this person speaking on this topic. Let's let them go ahead and say what they're going to say. And they have to be able to say that when I say this comment, this is the information I'm going to be leveraging. This is where I got my sources from. And as of this date, this is where we can all share and find it, right? Not really as a defense, but say, this is how I have the platitude or confidence in saying, I know this is right. And then bring a question to the forum, say, hey, I know this, but I don't know how this affects you, right? So what I heard you say was, X happened. I know this to be true, but tell me more about, and so you come with a tone of curiosity. Tell me more about when you are saying this, how that affects me, or how does that influence you? So now I'm forcing you to give details with the ground rules, and be curious, and with others, acknowledging that you have to address that other people's needs are in the room. Does that help?
Absolutely. We do have another question as well. What are some recommendations to deal with internal conflict between team members? So if there's an internal conflict, whether it's a difference of opinion or whatever it may be, how do you deal with those internal conflicts with team members before it goes to the level of reaching your supervisor or your leadership team?
Right. So the conflict is going to happen always. It's just a matter of expectations not being set, because there's different training, there's different work experiences, there's different access to information, right? So you want to make sure. So what I do is I personally use behavioral assessments just to kind of say, hey, this is the kind of way that I operate. I operate either by doing, I'm really social, and I get information from different people. I'm really calculated. I need everything in a spreadsheet. If it doesn't go in a spreadsheet, it doesn't exist. I'm thinking of the DISC assessment. There's the steady people who are saying, I don't bother anything. And so just because they're not speaking up doesn't mean they don't have a voice, but you have two that are definitely going to share their minds, right? And so when I'm thinking about the person, I look at their personality. What are they prone to reacting? What is going to trigger them? Do they feel insecure? Do they feel that someone is criticizing them? Do they feel like they're, what is triggering it? And is it false? Like, is it because you've done this to me before and I just haven't spoke up about it? I anticipate you're going to backstab me again. So because those conversations can happen, I do the assessments to say, this is how you are as an individual, and these are the things that trigger you. And you tell everyone in the room, and you pick a scenario and say, if we were to talk about something like this, how would this affect you? What would you be looking for? And when I understand the person, and then I talk about the what your triggers are, and then how do you want to be able to talk to each other, and then we'll pick a scenario like that and say, hey, well, in this case, let's see if we can use some of the skills and things that we learned to not trigger fear or frustration or anger into someone else, and let's see if we can unpack this using those same skills here. And then we talk about, so when you say this, I hear this means this to me, and then validate, is that what you mean? Give them an opportunity to say yes, no, but in your own words, I didn't hear it that way. I was thinking this. And then sometimes it's just once you find out the more information, like, oh, I see how you got to that conclusion. So allowing someone to share their point without arguing them, but out of a tone of curiosity. Sometimes those conversations cannot happen without a moderator or a mediator. But what you want to do is, if it does get escalated, say, hey, I'm expecting you all to be able to solve this. Here's some skills you can try to do. Here's some transition statements. Here's how you're able to talk to each other and agree how you're going to move forward. And tell me what you're trying as your next step before you come to management for a decision. Does this need a management decision? Why? And tell me what risks you're concerned about when you're including me. It doesn't mean that the manager automatically doesn't have to deal with the team either, because when I do the workshops, I expect the manager to be in the room to learn the team, to support them, and to help them support the manager as well. So it's a relationship, not just a babysitting oversight.
Okay, thank you so much. And it kind of piggybacks off of one of the comments in the chat. It said that we need to create a safe space to exchange ideas. So I definitely think that is true. And you spoke to that. We have a lot of comments in the chat. Someone said that they definitely work better when they are a part of a team with a common goal and not just off on their own. So just reiterating what you said, that it is important to work as a team with a common goal. And sometimes it's best to work as a team and not on your own. We have some people that put in the chat for lead, leverage everyone and drive.
Yes.
That tone, energy, attitude, and mindset can definitely build a team rapport. So there are a lot of great comments in the room. We had someone, thank you for encouraging teams to engage with others versus against each other. I would love for you to go into that a little bit while we have about 4 minutes left. Engage with each other and not against each other.
Yeah, so in the earlier video was probably the best reference of talking about being task focused or relationship focused. So when you're being task focused, so another practice would be, if you're in the room, if you're all on the same side of a table and then are faced with the problem, even if it's just the word or the scenario or a picture that may represent what is going on, and everyone is focused on like physically looking at it. Sometimes the body of just physically looking at it, say, what should we be looking at and what should we need to change? Let's identify and agree that we've got this part. Let's not rush to the end because we have steps to get there. So you have to trust the process, right? And if you're going through your process of discussing with each other, okay, this is what we know, this is what we don't know, this is what we think we know. Do we have the access to the information to validate and to make sure that it's right? And as we're looking at the problem, we're not looking at each other to say, well, and then we also we can go to someone and say, hey, in your position or in your role, you have access to this information. What can you bring to the table? It's all about how you frame it, and not of, weren't you supposed to do that? Yeah. We could probably talk a lot about what things happened in your day and why wasn't it, exactly. That's not how life works. It doesn't work like that at all. So when you're able to, if you're physically in a room, face the object that you want. And we're in virtual settings now. I found that when I'm leading groups that are in a virtual, sharing the screen, sharing the same picture, being able to raise your hand and say, I see something differently. Can we talk about this? Can we put it on the parking lot? And don't leave it on the parking lot and forget about it. You have to, or they'll start losing their voice. So that's how, those are some ways that are, you have to practice it consistently so that you're able to support each other while you're focused on the problem, because the problem is the problem. Y'all aren't the problem. The people aren't the problem. It's the issue that you're working with together.
Okay, thank you so much. This was wonderful. Thank you for imparting your knowledge in this session, Dr. Whitaker. I will definitely be taking some things back to my organization, and I hope that everyone on the session got a little tidbit to build your team rapport. In regards to the videos that were shared, IT did tell me that they would be able to share those videos after the session is ended. So if you'll look for those, just the IT technical issue. We live in a virtual world now, so just little technology issues. But on behalf of the Greenville Chamber's 4th Annual DEI Summit and presenting sponsors Michelin North America, I would like to thank Dr. Whitaker and you for your participation in this event. At this time, you may log out and transition to the next segment of today's summit as per the agenda. This concludes this session. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.